Hello once again. Welcome to Little Belize. So I was doing a little bit of fact checking and learning more about the history of Belize. I'm saying that, if a society is struggling to govern itself and take control of its current and future economic security, you gotta look at ways why it's an uphill battle or there's so much delay and power struggle. Part of that is examining history. So I found out that they had, let's say, about maybe, it's kind of tough to put a number on it, but they had Belize had some several slave revolts that was pretty intense. So once slavery ended, the masters of the settlement, or those who have control, which was a tiny elite. That tiny elite took control by holding the entire country under siege and preventing the freed slave from gaining access or having access to land. So what they did, they held the country under a submissive dictator rule, and those are my words I'm adding in, for over a century, or roughly a century. So what they did and how they did it was to control the free slave by a combination of wage advance and company stores, and preventing ownership of property. So that was pretty clever and wise. So according to historian Nigel Borland, there was a major slave revolt in 1820, and then there was a slave rebellion in 1823. Whew. Wish I checked that huge pothole right there, filled with muddy water. So even during slavery, they recognized that you had to provide something to the global economy, and for the nation of Belize, it was the extraction of timber. I found out that they were also using the timber to make dye, and they slowly merge and migrate into harvesting mahogany, because part of the treaty and the territorial claim and dispute between the Baymen and the Spaniards was that the settlers could not produce or own plantation, which would be the type of plantation that would allow them to grow produce, veggies and tobacco, sugar cane and all that stuff. They just allowed them to extract the natural resource, which was timber at that time. And the logwood was used for dye and using it to repair ships. As I stated in other videos before, that they use it to repair ships. And then I also found out that you could also use certain types of timber that is native to the region to make dye. So as I embark on this path, I'm starting to find out and learn that you can use your natural resources to generate income, and we can start using the process of making dyes to add that to our tourism. And if it's something that is, you know, very successful, we can also see if we can export dye and see what other things that can be gained from that type of industry. So that they stated the last slave revolt happened in 1820 in Belize and Siboon River. So this right here, I think we call it chichibe, and it's also a herb. So once that last slave revolt happened, it seems like they had another large non-violent rebellion that took place, and it was brutally crushed by the colonists. And under John Murray, they killed an estimated of total fighters range from roughly about 200 to about 500 men and women. After the insurrection was put down, the government sentenced another 45 men to death and then executed another 27 more. So trying to get like the total amount of slavery or enslaved people in Belize from 11 to right up to 1823 or 1830. That was not an easy task. So according to the last settlement or the last era or phase of the nation, when slavery ended, it stated that they roughly had about 2,500 men and women and possibly children that were slaves. Then they had approximately another 400 to about 600 freed colored people who had gained their freedom some way or another. So in total, it stated that the census was roughly 3,000. I do believe the land department here is here over there, and that's also the first department. San Ignacio and Santa Elena, the Twin Tongue branch. This used to be where you'd come and pay your electric bill, but since COVID it hasn't They haven't reopened it at all. So you go to courts and you pay your electric bill there. So in 1511, the first European set foot in the territory, I'm going to use territory for back then, which is today modern Belize. It was a crew of shipwrecked Spanish sailors who landed in northern Belize. During that same time, they had something that would lead them to be indifferent and would create tension and cause a thing called the Battle of Saint. I couldn't find information what that meant, but around 1511, somewhere around that time, the Spanish and the people who had other Europeans who had settled the area, it broke out into a coastal war over the Yucatan coastal area. And they claimed Yucatan, which is parts of Mexico and parts of the territory or the area of Belize. So that thing was a conflict with the Spaniards, who came with this ideology of trying to subdue, dominate, and take control of the region, which is current day Belize, which they also lost. Used to be a creek that ran through here back in the day. Used to be all year round. Sounds like it's still going, but it's down to a trickle because it used to be a little bit deeper than that, or had more water in it. So you have the mighty Saboon River, and I'm assuming in that thing called Belize River there are two different rivers that merge and link into one. I couldn't find information about that, and don't hold me to it. But the mighty Saboon River, it starts in the Maya Mountain. It's approximately 800 meters. 800 meters. It travels roughly about 50 miles, the source to the mouth where it empties into the Caribbean Sea. So that river actually twists and runs. It twists and runs, which translate into over 100 miles of actual river. So Belize had a few slave revolts that they logged. Those slave revolts took place. The first one happened in 1765, 1768, 1773, and the last major one 1820, and then just a rebellion at 1823. So one of the things that kind of made it difficult to log, it seemed like that because it was a society that was mainly focused on logwood harvesting and not plantation cultivation or cultivating. Tons of the indentured servitudes and slave would run away or flee using the terrain to escape and create their own settlement. Now I don't know, there's nowhere for me to confirm and verify if they did, but that will be for another one. So with that said, they also had to deal with the terrain, not being able to or know the area well enough, figure out how to scratch a life, and then they also had to deal with the declining Mayas as well. So around the time Cristobal Colon came through, the Maya society, Maya civilization was in a steady decline, as the first settlers that landed here in 16 something, it was more of like, the Mayans were mainly living as like hunter-gatherers in small villages or tiny villages or communities.